Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Since doing my pricing spreadsheet video, I wanted to jump into something that people don't ask me that much about this now because I haven't really been very active on my soaping Instagram account. But when I was very active and I was getting lots of new followers all the time, I was getting a lot of questions about how do you wholesale and how do you do private label? Like, help me with that. So a couple years late, but here I am with a video to kind of outline for you how you should go about handling private label or wholesale orders for your business. First things first, private label, just to sort of explain that, is manufacturing a product under somebody else's brand name or somebody else's label name. It's something that you make, but you don't take credit for, so to speak. It's something that you're just making for somebody else. They're going to put labels on it, or you put their labels on it, and then they sell it under their brand. You're not responsible for the retail sales of that. You just make them a product that they are asking for, give it to them, and then they sell it. It's their product for their brand. You just made it for them. That's private label. Wholesale is really just bulk sales. Large quantity sales that you're making a product and selling it, but it still has your brand name and your information on it. Hopefully that clears that up in case you were unsure. So let's get into some of my tips and rules for private labeling and wholesaling. Number one. This is the most important rule, I'd say, out of all of this, or at least something that's going to get you out of a lot of trouble as long as you follow this rule initially, and that is never do anything, private label or wholesale, until you get paid. I'll say it again, don't do anything, private label or wholesale, without getting paid first. Somebody approaches you and said, hey, I'm really interested in 100 bath bombs for my retail store. I really want a pineapple scent and blah, blah, blah. I want to have mango butter in it, whatever. And you get that going. You might go, wow, 100 of these, that's like a big order. I'm really excited about doing that. You might want to start it before you narrow everything down. I know I've gotten a little excited about orders like this in the past. And it's very easy to get ahead of yourself, and then all of a sudden this person bails on you and you started their order, but they never actually paid for their order yet. So don't do that. You need to discuss payment and at least get 50% up front before you proceed at all. Discuss things with them, narrow down details with them, make sure you're on the same page before getting paid, but don't buy anything. Don't put yourself out in that way, because you're going to get yourself in trouble, and a lot of the time people bail. People will bail all the time. I've had a lot of discussions with people for wholesale orders, for private label orders. It never turns into anything. And I'm glad that I never actually bought ingredients for these products and these orders ahead of time, because it would have been useless. So that's the number one rule. Don't do anything until you've been paid. All right, rule number two is discuss everything up front. This is the period before you've gotten paid in most cases, but it's important to go over all of the details ahead of time so things don't create a problem down the road. So things to discuss would be your label costs and your price breaks. Price breaks meaning, are they going to get a lower price if they order a certain amount? This is where it's important for you to know your costs and use a spreadsheet. Say you normally buy a 7.5 pound bucket of coconut oil, but this person potentially wants hundreds or thousands of something, and then you'd be buying a 5-gallon bucket of coconut oil, or maybe even a big old 55-gallon drum of coconut oil. You have to be able to calculate those costs out and tell them, well, if you order this much at this frequency, it's going to be this much less per unit. Discuss that with them. Definitely make sure you know what your labor costs are going to be, and do not deviate too much from that. I discussed in my previous video about pricing to charge and make for yourself at least $2 a unit. no matter what it is that you're making. If there's going to be more work involved, charge more. Don't go less than $2 though. I'm saying, usually about $3 a piece is going to be what you need to make good money. But again, that's up to you to discuss with your person. Make sure you're discussing that with the client that's coming to you requesting your services. Let them know. You don't even have to break it down and say my labor cost is this and my material costs are this. In fact, I recommend you don't break it down like that necessarily. But for when you're making your own cost, you have to let them know my minimum order quantity for these bath bombs is 100. They're going to be $3.28 each. If you buy 500, that goes down then to $3.07 each. Your labor costs should stay the same because it's really the same amount of work each, no matter how much you're making above a certain amount. Your turnaround time is something that you should be discussing. How long from when they pay you will they be receiving the product? So if they're paying you today, you have to order supplies, you have to then make everything, you may have to package everything, and then there's shipping time to get it to them. Usually there's shipping time. If you're dealing with a local company wholesaling, there might not be shipping time, but either way, you need to know what that turnaround time is going to be. You got to give them a fair and accurate estimate so they can understand when they're going to receive the thing that they paid you for. Testing fees. Testing meaning recipe testing. Specifically with like wholesaling, somebody might say, maybe it's a store in town that says, I really like your soaps. Can you make, 25 soaps for me to sell in my store wholesale at a time? It'll probably need more once a month or something like that. If you're using a soap recipe that you've already used, you don't really need to charge them to test that recipe because you know how it's going to behave. If somebody approaches you and they want an entirely new product, an entirely different product, something you've never made before, something you need to figure out how to make, you should be charging them this much to develop that recipe, perfect that recipe, and to spend all that time making sure that when they order the actual full size amount of whatever it is, that recipe is going to work. Because you don't want to go in and make a batch of 200 of something, never having made that recipe before, and all of a sudden you fudged it all up and you have to eat that material cost because you messed it up and you weren't thinking ahead. So always discuss a recipe testing fee and time period and those materials and everything before you jump into a larger batch if it's something new. Talked a little bit about minimum order quantity. That's for you to decide for yourself how few or how many of something you're going to make for this company or person. Recipe exclusivity. This is a good one that you need to discuss. If it's a soap recipe, it's, again, like I had mentioned earlier, if there's a company in town that says, I want 25 of these soaps to sell in my store, and it's a recipe that you do for yourself all the time, let them know that this is a recipe I use for other things, and I'll make this recipe for your store, blah, blah, blah. If somebody, again, wants something brand new, and you need to come up with a brand new recipe, talk with them about the exclusivity of that recipe. You want to say to them, this is something I'm creating essentially for your brand or for your store or what have you. How do you feel about me using this and then selling it in my store? The same recipe, if it's private label that you're making it for, you would sell it under your own label if they agree to that. There are a lot of variables there, but that is something that you should consider and discuss with them ahead of time before you move forward with the order itself. Estimated order frequency. This should really help you to calculate your costs, and it also kind of gives you a ballpark idea of how much money you're going to be making, which is it's kind of fun to think about, and it's helpful too, especially for those recipe costs. If you are going to be making 100 of something once a week or once every 2 weeks, you can technically buy larger amounts of those ingredients than if they're going to buy 50 of something twice a year. Ask ahead of time. There's no shame in going, how much do you estimate you're going to be ordering these and how often? It's to help me figure out my costs. Things are going to be fresher. If you know your ingredients are going to be fresher, if you know how much you should be ordering, at a time and how often and so on. You don't want to just naturally expect that somebody's going to order a lot, so you order a huge amount of ingredient to get a lower price, and then they never reorder. That's happened to me before too, where I go out of my way, get really excited about this wholesale account or this private label account. I think I'm going to be really busy making orders for somebody. I buy ingredients in a decent quantity, and then they don't order enough, and these things just sit around because it's not something I would use for my normal orders or recipes or anything. So try to figure out how much they're going to be ordering and how often. It's going to just make things so much easier in the long run. And then something I have marked down here is who buys what. Now, what does that mean? I have had clients where, say I need to buy a bunch of jars for a product, a face mask. Who's going to buy those jars? I've had clients who they will send me the money. I give them a quote from the company of these jars are going to cost this much plus shipping. I then invoice my client. He sends me the money, and then I buy the jars myself, and they get shipped to me, and I have them. I've had other clients where they're going, I'm going to buy these jars and just have them shipped to you, or I already have them on hand, and I'm going to ship them to you. So try to just discuss who's going to be buying what. I've had other customers too, clients, where they'll have a fragrance on hand. I want you to use this fragrance. I'm going to send you the fragrance. Sometimes that can be a lot of shipping, but they're technically the ones eating that shipping cost. Discuss that with the person ahead of time or the company ahead of time so everybody knows what to expect with that sort of thing. Now let's talk a little bit about fees in depth. Let's try to figure out the best way for you to determine your fees for big orders like this. I said it earlier, I said it in other videos, never ever go less than $2 per unit for your labor costs. Unless you have a large factory and you have machinery doing this work for you, which I'm guessing that you don't. Even if you did, you have to pay for that machinery, and that would be somehow rolled into your overhead anyways. $2 each labor is a fair price. You're getting paid it ends up being, I mean, if you're busy with orders like this, you're going to be making good money, but it's fair money too. You're not overcharging somebody at $2 each, but you're making a good wage for the hard work that you put in. If you're doing more work, say you have a product that you know takes longer to put together, you know it takes longer to package it and put labels on the containers, and then those containers need to go into a special box, and you got to put a barcode on the top, all sorts of those things. Charge more than that. I think a $2 to $4 range each is a fair labor cost. Your labor costs, just to sort of reiterate from my last video, those labor costs count the actual time that you're working. It covers your overhead, so you can pay your bills from this money. And then there's also your profit, which is like your leftover paycheck. $2 to $4 each is fair. It's reasonable. You're going to be making good money, that you're going to be proud of the work that you're doing. The person is still going to be getting a fair wholesale rate, because most products, the materials and the packaging, all together, even if they're ordering small amounts, it doesn't cost more than $2 or $3 total, sometimes $4 if you have really fancy packaging. And they should, of course, be responsible for paying for the packaging, depending on if you're the one who physically buys it or if they ship it to you. But you're not buying packaging out of your own pocket unless that's rolled into your cost. But that's another story altogether. Excuse me. So make sure that you're charging at least $2 each for yourself. That's your money. I would say 3 is the average, but don't go less than $2 per piece. That's just crazy. If you're getting paid through PayPal, which I do, all of my transactions go through PayPal. I have a lot of money going in and out of PayPal every month and every year. It actually makes it easier at the end of the year when it comes tax time, because I can just pull up my PayPal transactions. But PayPal takes 3%, so keep that in mind. You got to pay the man too. There are other programs that you can exchange money on. They're all going to take a cut. I've used PayPal because I've had a PayPal account since I was a kid. Since I was in like 10th grade, I've used PayPal. So I stick with PayPal, but they do take 3%. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. Let's see here. Always round up. It's better in any situation to throw a few extra cents on a recipe cost or to take a number. Never like lowball it. Always just round it up. If you're looking at a cost, this is $4.21. You just don't like to look at that, make it $4.25. Make it $4.50. I mean, never round down. As long as you're rounding up, you don't have to round up real high, but never ever round down, because there are times, even myself, where I'm creating a recipe or I'm calculating my costs and I miss something. And if you round up, you kind of know that it's covered at the end of the day. Okay, here's a tricky one. What do you charge to create a new recipe? If somebody approaches you, this is probably in a private label situation, and somebody wants you to create a product that you've never made before, and you need to create a recipe or maybe even reverse engineer another product's recipe, and they want something similar to that, you need to charge appropriately for your time, for your expertise, and for everything that you, because there's a lot involved in creating a brand new recipe for somebody, especially if it's not your own creative mind coming up with something you would want. You have to match what somebody else would want, and they're describing what they want to you, and you have to somehow turn that into a physical thing. Important that you're charging appropriately for something like that. There are two ways to do this, and I've done both. You could charge a per hour rate ahead of time, or you could charge a flat fee. Say, you need to make a new recipe, you're comfortable with it. You have to be comfortable with it to accept the job, okay? So you have to at least kind of expect that you're able to do it. There's going to be work involved in actually doing it, but obviously don't go taking on projects that make you scared shitless. You have to have some sort of grasp on what you're about to do. As long as you're okay with what you're about to do, you have to estimate how many hours of experimenting it's going to take for you to nail that down for them. You're also probably going to have to buy materials, potentially, to create this thing for them. So you could charge them per hour or a flat fee. What I have written down here, and you don't have to charge $500, but that's sort of a starting point, I guess. If somebody wants a brand new recipe for you, you could say, my recipe creation fee is $500, PayPal me here, blah, blah, blah. But what this covers is the variable amount of time that I'm going to be working on this. This covers material costs, and I'm going to need to buy some new ingredients to play around with this, and all of the testing, and you roll it into one solid thing. $500 fee, you can make it a $100 fee, you can make it a $1,000 fee. These big companies, large private label manufacturing companies in the skincare and beauty industry, charge at least $2,500 for this. Okay, at least. Granted, these companies have facilities that are not in their home. They probably have certifications. They might have organic capabilities, like certified organic, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't say you jump right into a $2,500 fee for something like that unless you have all of those things. But don't lowball yourself. And sure as shit, don't do it for free. Don't just spend all this time creating a recipe but not get paid for it, because that's crazy. You could also say by the hour. In the past, it takes me 3 hours to take one of my recipes and to perfect it. My rate is $100 an hour, so that's $300. This is going to take 5 hours. That's $500. That covers the materials and all the time it takes me to go through that. The thing with the hourly rate is you might take more hours than that. You might take less hours than that. But again, it should kind of still be the same as if you charge a flat fee. You can charge $25 an hour and say it's going to take 5 hours. I think that's a low ball. I wouldn't go as low as that. I think you should be charging about $100 an hour for your recipe creation work. It's hard work to create a recipe, especially if it's something off the wall that you wouldn't have thought of yourself necessarily. So you need to determine what that fee is going to be for that and charge it. And don't start that recipe until they've paid you. And then you buy your ingredients and etc. and so forth. Again, if it's something that you make normally and they just want you to make more of something you normally make, but maybe change a few things, like, oh, I really like the soap that you make. Can you make it smell like Nag Champa? You don't really have to test that out. Maybe do a small batch so you know the fragrance is going to behave if you're not used to the fragrance. But other than that, you don't really need to be charging for that. This is for new recipes, essentially. I know I'm forgetting something. Oh, equipment. You need to figure out if you need to buy new equipment. You need to find a way to how you're gonna charge your client for that new equipment. If it's something that you're not going to be able to use otherwise, something you don't have and wouldn't need, you charge them for it. As an example, I recently started making a shampoo product, private label, and I use a 5-gallon bucket to mix this in. Now my stick blender, my normal soap making stick blender, sure does not go to the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket. So I needed to get a drill and one of those drill really long mixing attachments. And I said to my client, this is the one I've worked with for years, hey, I need to get a drill and a mixing attachment. Let's go half on it. He always agrees to that because it's a reasonable request. So he sends me the money for half and then I pay the other half myself. We split it because I can use a drill for other things. I can use the mixing attachment for other things. It's not necessarily exclusive to his product. Now, if somebody wanted, I'm trying to think of like a specific sort of example. All right, I've been looking into making lipsticks lately. Say somebody wants you to make lipstick and you need to get this fancy pants lipstick mold. And it's going to cost $600 and you got to order it from China and blah, blah, blah. And you're never going to use it beyond that. That's up to them to pay for that. They want to invest in making lipsticks, private label for their business and pay you to make those for them. They can buy the equipment needed. So if you're not ever going to use it beyond that and it's exclusive to their product that you're producing for them, say, hey, this is involved, and you invoice them for that cost. And you don't buy it until they pay you, or else you got a lipstick mold that you're never going to touch. So be sure that you're discussing materials needed too. Not materials, equipment needed. Let's see here. Gotta look at my notes. Let's talk about ownership of these recipes. Say you're creating a recipe for someone, private label or for wholesale, and you're doing something, you charge them $500 to create a recipe for them. You're using it exclusively for them. You're not selling it under your own brand in your own shop or what have you. And then a couple years go by and they go, hey, I'm going to make these myself now. Can you send me an email of the recipe? Don't do it. Not until they pay you for it. You own that recipe. You own it. You created it. Doesn't matter that they paid you to create it. It is still your intellectual property. If it's written down, that piece of paper is your physical property, and you do not need to give it away. In fact, I would smack you if you gave it away. They want a recipe, they can buy it from you because you still own that. Legally, you do. That's common practice in this industry, that you own the recipe that you create, period. If you discuss at the beginning that they own the recipe that you're creating for them, you need to charge them for that up front. Period. Period. That's just the end of it. Don't give your recipes away for free. How much do you sell it for? That is a good question. Again, these big manufacturing companies are selling, recipes are over $2,000 each, sometimes as much as $5,000. It really depends on the frequency in which they're ordering and how much, and so forth. It depends on the recipe, how much you charge for it. But don't lowball yourself. I think a lot of us, and this goes for everything that I've just said, a lot of us, especially if we have a small shop, or maybe we make and sell our skin and beauty products as a hobby, sort of a hobby that still makes a little bit of money, to when somebody approaches you with a big order, big ongoing orders too, where you can make some real money, it feels almost too good to be true. and you don't want to puck it up, so to speak, so you lowball yourself in order to still get the business. And don't do that, because it's unprofessional. It makes you look unprofessional, and you're not doing yourself any favors by that. Make sure that you're charging appropriately, because you deserve to make a lot of money for your skills and your effort and your art that you're producing. That being said, what do you charge for a recipe that somebody wants? At least a couple $100s. If they were buying like a lot from you, and then they want to take that recipe and move it to somebody else making it, that's all that future income that you're going to be losing. Say you made $10,000 a year off this one recipe from this person, and they want to buy your recipe and move on, charge them. And if they don't want to pay that amount, don't sell it. That's it. Don't lowball yourself. Don't feel like I don't want to say that everybody's going to try to come after you and take advantage of you, because everybody won't, but people still might, and they could, and they have done that to me before. And I've had people try to get me to give my recipes away for free, which would have taken a lot of income right out of my pocket. And I said no. No, you're not getting it for free. And they wouldn't pay, and that was that. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into that specifically, but there are going to be people potentially who might want something for free. They might try to tell you that you're not, that they might try to demand that they own the recipe. That's why you should talk about it up front. They don't own the recipe. You own the recipe. You created it. It's literally your intellectual property, unless you choose to give it away or sell it. Don't give it away, though. Please don't give it away. Charge at least a couple $100. If it's going to be taking thousands of dollars out of your pocket, out of your income that you rely on, charge them more than that. Charge them several grand for it. They're either going to pay or they don't. I mean, that's that. But don't give it away for free. Don't let people bully you. And more than anything, don't lowball yourself. You need to be confident enough in what you're doing to get paid what you should be getting paid. And honestly, this sort of work, if you're going to make a living creating products for other people, or for people to sell in their businesses, in their shops, at their galleries, on their websites, etc., you should be making good money for that. You shouldn't be struggling to do that. I mean, go out there and make a good living if that's what you're trying to do. Charge good money for your recipes, for your creativity, everything. Don't go less than $2 each on your labor, and don't go less than a couple $100 on a recipe, honestly. Really sort of know your worth, don't forget your worth, and be confident when you ask for that from someone. Again, it's especially if you're new to this sort of thing, it's so easy to lowball because you'd rather have the business at all than lose it because you were asking for too much, being greedy or something like that. But just realize that you're not being greedy by asking for what is still lower than what a large company would be charging. One of the benefits for a person picking to do private labeling with you, an individual sole proprietor in a business, than a large company that's doing private label, they're probably going to get faster turnaround time. They're going to get probably more personalized product. A lot of these private label companies have sort of set guidelines, like they have a base lotion recipe that they can alter a little bit, but they're not going to build up a brand new recipe from scratch for lotion just because you want one. Not without a 10,000 minimum order quantity. So you can probably make a brand new lotion recipe for them at 50 units every so often, or 100 or something like that. So people are probably going to get faster turnaround time, more customized product, a more personable experience because they're dealing with you, an individual, not a customer service representative. I'm guessing you don't have customer service representatives working for you. Maybe you do. If you do, I'm not sure why you're watching this video, because you should know this already. But you get what I'm saying. There are benefits to picking a small individual with a small business over a large company. There are benefits to picking large companies too, but there is still such a need for this middle ground private label. It's sort of untapped because a lot of these big companies do have very high MOQs. They're not that flexible in what they're doing. And it can take months before these people are getting their orders. So you might find people reaching out to you for private label if you put yourself out there as ready for that sort of thing. I think I covered everything I wanted to in this video. I hope that you took something from it. Let me know if this was helpful to you or if this wasn't. I'm looking down. This is like almost a 30-minute video. With editing, it's still going to probably be about 30 minutes. But hopefully this shed some light for you, helped you to figure out what you should be charging, what's fair to charge. And hopefully this lets you know and helps you to be more confident in telling people what you charge, knowing yourself what you should be charging them, how to go about all the logistics, and basically just to get yourself ready to take on larger wholesale bulk orders, whether it is wholesale under your own brand or whether it is private label under somebody else's brand. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful to you. If it wasn't, be nice, but you can tell me if it wasn't. And yeah, more videos like this to come. I'm going to delve into next probably some reverse engineering of recipes, because I get asked to do that a lot. I'm going to help you to get familiar with how I reverse engineer a recipe, which is a very big thing of private label, I found out. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, whether or not you're looking forward to more videos from me. Follow me on Instagram at ArachneSmize, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.